Hi, this is Dr. Scott, and today we're going to get into a conversation about wealth managers and IRS. And you're going, that's a boring topic. No, it's not, because it's relating to every single person in the world, or in America, let's just say specifically, because the world's going to be that same thing. We're about ready to be into a situation where the IRS is going to be no more. And you're going, really? I know that's what Trump wants it to be. Listen, he is setting it up, and I've been talking about this for 5 years. The IRS is going to go away, and then we're going to be on a gold-backed dollar, which are the essentials of the only way to fix this thing. But the reality is, here's what he's doing on top of it. He is doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down upon that promise. I mean, normally when a campaign promises, I promise to do, and then, he never really talks about it again, right? And we see this in congressional and in Senate races, we see this in governor races, and we see this in president races. And yet Trump just keeps pushing the button deeper. Like, if you were a person who didn't believe in the death of the IRS, you would please go, oh God, would you stop talking about this? You're making me crazy, right? All of his advisors around him, he's like, hell no, I'm talking about it, and I'm going to keep talking about it. So it's a cornerstone of his concepting. Um, and most people are not listening in that way. And I'll give you an example of a group that's really not listening are the wealth managers. Guys, listen closely. I was talking to a friend of mine on his channel, Mark Z, and someone asked a question like, "How do you know this kind of stuff?" And not just what we were talking about last night, but it was, how do you know this, or how do you do this? Like, one of my giftings is to kind of see inside of businesses and models, and go, yeah, you might want to consider this concept, this way of thinking. Because, the Clydesdale kind of thinking is a really bad problem. And as an audiologist, as I've spent 35 years doing my field, every year I've made significant or smaller changes and tweaks. And most people go, well, yeah, I make changes here and there. No, you don't make changes like I make changes. Um, I am so comfortable in change because the reality is, and I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing, but what I'm doing is I'm making a change so that we can see a different result to improve things. And sometimes I'm looking at a future point, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I'm saying we need to be on that wave, jumping up toward that. And I am seeing right now a huge number of tax professionals and wealth managers who are not seeing this wave. And I'm like going, you guys should have been catching this wave months and years ago. And it's going to hit you, and you are going to be like the dude standing at a tsunami on a coastline. Like, what do you expect? It's going to wash you out with that too. Let's talk about that, and I'll show you on the screen here. All right. How do financial advisors make money? Normally, what they do, excuse me, sorry, so getting over things. There's client fees, there's commissions, there's salaries. It depends on the thing. If in the first $1 million, up to $1 million, they're making a 1%. So on overall basis, on a lot of most of their clientele, if they have that not a lot of money, they're making up to about 1%, and after that, it's a little bit less. So when you get to the high net wealth people, there's actually a graduated amount that they're making. But see, when you have 5 million under management of that guy, you've got a lot of money capable. Okay. Now, so that's how they think about this. Now, here's what I want you to think about as well. Now, I've been talking about the IRS death for a heck of a long time, for 5 years, but I just came across this article that's fascinating. I want you to catch the date here. It's December of 2018, and it's talking about how the IRS was gutted. Who gutted it? Trump. This is in the time frame of Trump in his first term, and the IRS budget has declined in that time frame. I have been talking about this for quite a long time frame. For instance, I've been spending some since 2018, or excuse me, 2009. What I noticed is that a salaried person was making less and less and less because Obama industry was taking out more and more from you. But in 2017 and beyond, suddenly the IRS is taking out of no one changed the deduction amount, right? But the IRS was taking out less than they used to. And by the way, that trend went from 2017 all the way through 2020, 2021. And idiot Joe was involved when he should have been doing the Biden kind of, the Obama kind of means, and he wasn't, which tells you he wasn't really in charge. And then what happens is that Trump does it again and increases those those tax cuts, and they're still there. You don't understand. They are still there and in spades. The Congress and everyone else is fighting about it, but I know for a fact those things are involved. Those things have been going down dramatically ever since this, right? But they have been seeing this kind of thing. After 43 years with the agency, I hope to have the 50th anniversary, is angry about a steady decrease in budget and resources. And many people have said, "Oh yeah, but they're hiring 80,000 new, employers." No, employees. No, they're not. They're not doing anything of the sort. Here's an interesting one that I thought was pretty darn interesting. This is about a year ago, and this is a Reddit kind of thing. So, anyone has seen this yet this year? I've lost 3 small business clients so far. All of them tell me that I did a fantastic job, but their financial advisors are now offering to do their taxes for free. He's talking about a brokerage. The brokerage firms of Edward Jones, Merrill Lynch, and Raymond James used to come down on advisors for giving tax advice. Wait a second. Financial, wealth managers do to give tax advice, and yet here's what he said. I guess these firms are now buying up the tax practice so they can. All I can say is good luck. I've got a few clients last year, and they came to me in their advisory kind of situation, end up and amending their tax points with this too. Don't worry about all the inside point here. What I want you to focus on is that the big companies are spending. They're doubling down. This was a year ago. They were doubling down and getting into the tax business. That's a losing game, and let's talk about this a little bit further, because I'm gonna share with you. Now, there is an interesting thing called the Simple IRA, and this is a type of way that wealth managers make money from the small person necessarily. There are other types of tax vehicles and wealth management vehicles that they do, but this is one of the very simplest ways that happens. So instead of in the past, companies, larger companies, could only do like these 401k, 403s, 457s. And 457s, those are for the massive kinds of firms, right? The teacher unions and blah, blah, blah. But a small business couldn't actually do that. So a person couldn't get it. So they came up with the idea, excuse me, of the Simple IRA, that really is made for everyone. And so what happens is it's a deferred amount, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it defers that amount so that all kinds of different people can get into this. But what it also requires is kind of interesting stuff. In a Simple IRA, it's available for the small kind of businesses, right? And in a traditional IRA, it's set up by an employer to save the investor in retirement for things. Same kind of thing. But here's one of the things. Who contributes to this account? Employer and the employee. Whereas the traditional IRA, the account holder, her or himself, are going to do that. Now, what they're going to say is they capped off the contributions on the traditional IRAs at 7K. And here's an interesting point. The cap on that is 18K. So, and an additional 3,500 for contribution for that employee. I mean, that's like extra money in your bank. And so what happens is that your amount, if you make $50,000, it goes down by however much you put in to the into your IRA. I mean, so your taxable income. This is how they talk about this, right? Now, that's a setup that's fascinating. But I want to tell you how they could actually be thinking about this a different way. Let me make the screen a hair bigger so you can see this. This is an actually fascinating little tool. It's called income tax calculator. And I just used Oklahoma in my state. We're just doing 50K. All right. So in a normal circumstance at 50K, the federal tax amount would be $4,200, right? State 1885. Social Security 3,100 and 725 for this. So your amount of income that you come, home with is 40K. So you basically lost 10K in the overall basis, right? So in essence, about 20% of it goes away with, this kind of stuff. Okay, now listen to me for a second. When IRS goes away, what would you have? Now, I believe you're still going to have to do the Social Security and Medicare. Why? Because I believe that Social Security in the near future, what's going to happen with Social Security is that that's going to go into a bank for you. That's one of the things I know is coming in this way. And that is going to be fascinating. And see, and again, a lot of people look at me like you're just making stuff up. Hey, man, if I was making stuff up about the IRS and now I've been proven right, do you think you might want to listen to me just a hair on this issue? So here's what would happen. The person that makes in this circumstance normally 50K, what they would be making is 46K. So what happens here is that, and we'll do some math here. Let's pull up a little calculator here. So let's do a calculator thing. And we'll just kind of do that. So we have $50,000. Oops, sheesh. Like, holy cow. Sorry. I don't use this calculator. I use my one on iPad. So if we subtracted out the 42, 41, and we subtract out excuse me, I'm going to do this in a different way. If we subtract out the Social Security, 3,100, right? And we also subtract out 725 for Medicare, you get 46,175. So in essence, from the 40K that you would have to this, you're talking about an average. So let's subtract that so you guys can see this. So the amount is $6,100 a year that you could do. Now, financial advisors, when the IRS deletes them, this is the play money that the person has. Let me show you some interesting things. How much does the employee get if they will spend money with the contribution? And so what happens is that there's a tax credit that comes in, and they can have around, it doesn't really show this, but basically, if they will put in the maximum amount that they could do, it could add up to another $1,500 a year that they've improved their situation by. So they have now $7,600 more than they had the year before. This is fascinating stuff. Now, if you think about that kind of number and you divide it by 12, right? And you got $635 a month. Okay. And that's going to come to you. Now, I guess, again, that extra $1,500 is from a Simple IRA that is put in aside for you because you put in the maximum amount with that too. And frankly, this is where these people should be living. Now, they should be asking for the whole $635 a month to be given into an IRA. But how about if they just said $300? So what happens here is that, oops, sorry, did that wrong here. So we have 635 minus 300. If they would just put $300 in a simple IRA and they got the matching kind of things, this is how much more that they would have every single month. Like that's a $300 upgrade or a big, big bonus in essence. A big salary increase that every single person, people ask me all the time, like, how is this stuff, this NASARA stuff ever going to benefit me? I'm like, there you go. That's an example of it every single day that you will see. And one of the things that happens when we go back to a go back currency is this. Pull this off the screen here because we don't need that anymore. But it is this point. In the go back currency, right now we have a massive level of near hyperinflation kind of stuff. 80% of every dollar that was ever created has been created in the last 5 years. 20% of every dollar that has ever been created was created from 1913 to 2020. But from 2020 to 2025, we have 80% of every dollar that's created. That is an 800% rise in inflation level. And no one wants to talk about that one. That's what the Fed and all these other things. So when Doge is standing over there talking about we're going to be looking, they just went through the USAID, right? And they found all this fraud. And then they're going to go over to a couple of interesting points. I've been hearing they're going to go over to the DOD and they're going to say, I mean, it's going to look like child's play with the USAID versus the DOD. Oh, baby. And the next one that's online that they're talking about is they're going to audit the Fed, something that has never ever happened in the history of the Fed. And you're going to say, wait a second, because once they audit the Fed, here's what's coming. And I know I'm bouncing around here a little bit, but I want you to see how the Fed is. The 14th Amendment under the 4th section stipulates this. We'll bring it back up on the screen here. That's not the best one there. Let's do an easier one. Okay, this is a better one for here. There's the 14th Amendment was done in 1868. Okay, the 3rd section talks about those who have insurrection cannot actually they cannot be a part of the government. This is about election issues here. Okay, so this is the oath of office. This is where we have this situation called the Brunson case that takes more specifically on this. The people have oath of office. They have violated their oath of office. Oh, baby. Now, in the section 4 of 14, it talks about the validity of public debt of the United States. What would that be? That's called the Fed. See, when Doge is coming for the Fed, it is actually running along the constitutional level of this. So it says authorized by law, including debts and pensions, any of suppressing insurrection and rebellion. And we're like, shall not be questioned. Like, wait a second, who does insurrection? Well, who are they? What are they talking about? They've not been following, anyone in Congress and Senate and the presidency have not been following constitutional law over and over again. I had this argument with a person about constitutional law on my YouTube channel here. And I'm like, you don't understand, this is a done deal with this. And so what I'm saying is that how have they been doing that? The Fed interacts with international agencies. Look at this. So, but neither shall a state assume an obligation of this and be a slave to them. And so here's what it says. This is so interesting. Those debts shall be held illegal and void. What Trump is about to do after he looks at the Fed is he's going to wipe out the Fed debt. And to keep the Fed debt out and wiped out, that is going to change the fundamental nature of wealth management and how money is done. But I'm just telling you guys, if you're a wealth manager and you've been talking about, tax strategies with people, I'm like, stop. That is completely, utterly ridiculous. The IRS is going to give you an opportunity to talk to your clientele about how they can have money in their own account without doing anything and be able to save for the future so that they're set up in their own retirement. But you've got to move with the tsunami that's coming, not against it. And unfortunately, most of them have not been doing that. Thanks so much.